Warning: the following program contains adult language, adult themes, and spoilers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to this week's episode of This Week's Episode. I'm your host, Angie Fernot. Joining me tonight is boomerang-wielding wisecracker Kris Randazzo.
I'm the sarcasm and meat guy.
Whip-smart waterbending master Karen Randazzo.
My favorite character is
And the dragon of the couch, Evan Goldstein.
How about some tea?
This is episode number 279 for the month of July, the year of our overlords, 2024. This month it was my pick. As you, I'm sure by now know, I chose Avatar the Last Airbender, the live-action edition, Season 1, Episode 1. Also known as the whole first season if we were able to do it, which we did, but we'll get into that later. Giving you a quick reminder, you can get in touch with us at mail@geekaid.com. We also have a Discord, or you can contact all of us individually if you listen all the way through the show when we give you our social media spiel. And reach out. Let us know if you want us to watch anything. I'm very indecisive. I don't want to make these decisions. I want you to just tell me what to do. Also, I want you to make me hate watch things, because apparently I'm into that. And
Weirdest kink ever.
We just want to know how you're doing. Tell us your life story. I won't read it, but, you know, I'll be glad that you sent it. Kris will read it. But yeah, anyway, how you guys doing?
Yay. It's so hot.
It is, you
so
know,
hot.
It's funny you should say that, because I was just looking for a blanket.
Oh, you are, oh my
I have
God.
a broken internal thermostat. I don't know. My body is broken and everything is a prison.
It has been, so we had a show this weekend, so on Saturday, and it was like 93 degrees inside where we were.
One might say like magma.
So there was the show, which was a great show. It was in 3 sections. They had the parking lot tents, they had the inside unair conditioned section, and then the air-conditioned bar area, because it was a brewery. And we got there third, and they gave us free reign. Like, we could pick wherever we want. And we both looked at each other and went, we'll pick in section 2, because we didn't know if anybody would go inside.
The middle ground, the inside-outside.
Boy, did we make the wrong choice.
So here's the thing. We did and we didn't. This was the worst part of it, because we did really well with foot traffic, and we got the one spot that was by the door, so we had occasional relief, and we were guaranteed to deal with people that were going in and out. However, we were dying. I don't know how the people who were outside in the parking lot area with their tents survived that day, because I think Evan almost had a heat stroke, and I was just delirious, and it took me 2 days to recover. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's weird, because I'll go outside in 90, 95 degree heat and mow the lawn and just sweat profusely, and that's fine. But I don't normally get that woozy feeling, but I guess sweating for 6 hours straight will do that to a guy.
Yeah, it was brutal, but we had a really good time. The show got picked up on by the local news network, so that was awesome, because they were doing B-roll, and when they were selecting imagery for their iconography on their article for the short version, they put the cover of Tales of Cape Fear. So
I saw that.
Yeah, it was really, it was cool. So unexpected, because the woman who took all of the shots never said a word to me. I didn't even know if she actually filmed me. So that was weird, but it was still really cool. We met a lot of really nice people, talked to a lot of cool people. And then we had that the opening too. I have
oh, that's right.
relevant to movies, not necessarily television. The restaurant in town called Bonsai, they used to be a food truck. They opened a brick and mortar, and I was working with this incredible interior designer who commissioned me to do 4 pieces for their restaurant. And they were permanent installation wall art of iconography from the 80s. So it was Karate Kid, The Goonies, Back to the Future, and Breakfast Club. And it was in the style of like the Aha Take On Me music video, like comic art looking stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, the grand opening was Saturday, and we got to go. Oh my god, y'all got to come down and visit and eat this freaking food with us. So good, so good. Oh, I wanted to curl up inside of a meatball burrito and live there.
A meatball burrito?
Yeah, they have pork meatballs, and I saw an order, and I had not gotten them, and I had the most food envy. And they have like Brussels sprouts, tofu. They have regular like normal proteins too.
Asian
but
fusion.
It's like a Korean-inspired Asian fusion. Really good kimchi. Like they just have so many good flavors. You have to have it. I'm not even hungry. Okay, we talked about chocolate before we started recording the podcast, and now all I want is chocolate in my face. Or fondue. I want fondue.
So...
Oh, yeah, so television.
Do you fondue?
How was your weekend? Because didn't you have a show?
Mine was pretty good. I was in a showcase of local artists that was held in a gallery space. It's a weird building. Mm-hmm. So they have it's called the Arts Garage, and they have all these little studios that different artists can rent out, but they have glass doors. You can see into them. When the artists are there and the spaces are open, you can go in while they're working and talk to them, and see all their art that they have displayed. So it's like kind of a combo gallery studio space. And then at the back of it, they have a little museum for Black artists, dedicated to Black artists in the area. And so there's this group that I belong to called Stories of Atlantic City that started a year ago holding artist meetups. And to celebrate their 1 year of meetups, they wanted to hold a kind of they called it the Celebration of Expression, which sounds like, I don't know, sounds artsier and fartsier than it was. But they had invited a bunch of artists. Some were at tables, some were just had gallery walls, temporary walls with their work on it. They invited performing artists, so there were poets, there were tap dancers, there were musicians, And anyway, so it was a really cool event. I had mega major mondo imposter syndrome because I do not consider my work as a cross-stitch artist to be on the same level as, paintings you would find in a gallery. So I had a lot of problems leading up to it, a lot of stress. But then, I got there and, half of the people that were on display, I already knew and had been in shows with. So it's
See?
Okay.
Oh, so we're all imposters tonight. Got it.
Exactly. So it was really good. It was not a sales-focused event, but that's okay. Because I just got to meet everybody and hang out with cool art people, and yeah. And my mom came. My mom never comes to things, so that was cool. And the kids came, and Kris brought the kids, and they got to see their mom on display in a gallery. So that's kind of cool.
That's really cool. Don't downplay this. You did an amazing thing, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you, but I didn't tell you the best part yet.
Oh my God, there's a better part?
I don't think I guess you probably haven't been on Instagram yet.
Oh.
So, while I was there, the table next to me was, there was a set of two tables. which was being shared by another local artist that I've run into at a lot of shows and talked to and have become friendly with.
Okay.
Her name's Joanna Miller, and goes under Totally Rad Artist. Her stuff is cool. Check it out.
Is it totally rad?
It is totally rad.
Okay,
it's all very like neon and 80s, 90s kind of pop culture stuff, and Jersey Shore inspired. Anyway, so she was there and sharing the table with this woman, Lori, who owns a local vintage shop called Oddball Vintage.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
So I've done Oddball Vintage holds monthly art show / flea market events, and I've participated in them before. I've been into the shop a bunch of times. I'm on a first name basis with the owner, and she's cool. She's the greatest. She's super sweet, and she likes my stuff. And she has this like alley in her store of cubbies that can be rented out by artists. And I knew when she opened her shop a year ago, I was like, that sounds like something I would like to do, but I'm scared and I've never done anything like that before. And I don't know if I talked myself out of it, basically. And then later when I talked to her about it, I found out I had missed the boat because everything was full up and there was a waiting list. So I brought it up again. At the event last week, I was like, hey, do you have any, like, cubby spaces opening up anytime soon? And she was like, actually, I have one right now. Can you move in this weekend? And so I did, and now my stuff is on display for sale in a store.
Yes, and it's a very cute little cubby, and I love the pieces that you picked to put on display.
Thank you.
I feel that there's a theme with your pieces, and it's amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I wanted to go with like kind of more broader appeal and not just like niche fandom stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's what's in the store.
It's a cozy cubby of feminism.
Yes. There will be more stuff in there, but I was like, okay, she wants me to get in there, so I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to like grab a bunch of stuff and throw it in there and make it look good. And then later when I want to like fine tune it, I'm going to go back and put more stuff in, but I need more price tags.
Ooh.
It
So, anyway,
looks great. It's a great little setup.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited about it. I was super particularly happy about it. I found like a shelf riser to put in the back so that I could like, layer heights of pieces. And but it was like a metal grid on the top, so like it wasn't a flat surface. I needed to stick something on top of it. And I was like, I need a piece of cardboard and I'll just paint it. And like, it's a wacky, kooky place, so it'll fit right in. So I found a piece of cardboard, but it was like the backing of the packaging for an art project that I got Ellie, and it had these like wavy zigzag lines in rainbow colors all across it. I was like, this is perfect. I just cut it to the right size and it was done.
I'm looking at it right now.
So yeah, I guess you could say good things have been happening, and yeah.
Nice. Yay!
It's almost like you're not an imposter, and you deserve this.
And you did a thing well, and that's what.
Use your words,
Thanks.
Karen. You can apologize for having great tits and correct opinions on everything.
I made a list of goals for the business at the beginning of the year, and this was on it, and I did it. So,
There you go.
that's pretty fucking cool.
You're manifesting that shit.
What? Is that a shrimp on the "ya basic" sign?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. From the Good Place.
Yeah. It's great.
I also like your sneaker post for reasons I won't get into, but
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that and the pattern on the Etsy and donate the profits to the campaign. But
sick. We're not talking about that. Anyway, all right. So, television-wise,
Does Kris
outside
have
of
anything?
Wait, Kris has an interesting thing to say.
Wait, you did, Kris? I thought you left us.
Nope.
Hey.
Hey,
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
hello.
I'm pretty sure there's a squirrel stuck in our chimney.
Yeah, so cool things are happening for him too.
Yeah, big week. No, there's lots of screeching noises coming out of my fireplace, and the flue's closed, so I don't plan on changing that.
No, I was
So
going to say,
I'm
please
like-
keep it that way.
decision is like he's clearly stuck in there. So do I leave him in there to die and then forget about it? The next time I go to start a fire, I open up the flue and get hit by a squirrel corpse, or do I call animal control and see if they can get it out without it running amok in my house?
Well, it depends. How much adventure and surprise do you want in your future?
Well, the last time this happened, because this isn't the first time this happened, we had an active fire going in the fireplace. And the squirrel fell down into the fireplace and was cowering in fear away from the fire. And when we tried to, lure it to safety, it ran into the house and locked itself in Karen's room, where we were able to open a window, close the door, call
You just
animal
said
control.
it locked itself, so I just pictured a squirrel running through your house, going into Karen, shutting the door behind it, locking it, and then holding no. Nobody
It got itself locked. Yeah. We opened a window and then ran out of the room and closed the door, and it was gone in the morning. So it found its way out, but yeah. I don't want to deal with a squirrel running around the inside of my house again. So, but it's contained this time. It's not running amok. We know exactly where it is. It's stuck in the chimney. So we open the flue, the squirrel gets out. But if animal control is here, then they can handle it. Or I could just, leave the dog there and let him basically reenact the ending of National Lampoon's Vacation. I don't.
So you're saying it's screeching? Is it is it making loud noises?
Yes.
Okay, because I will never. One of the scariest situations I had ever been in was at 3:30 in the morning. When in my old apartment, a squirrel that was in the attic fell into the wall behind my bed and started screaming as if it was on fire, and it scared the ever living oh my God, the noises that thing was making.
I mean, I feel bad laughing about it because I really just don't want it to suffer and be in pain, but also just the weird situations that squirrels get themselves into.
I mean, it's truly.
What an ass. What are you doing in my chimney?
Being stupid. That's what they do.
All right.
Well,
I also finished making another one of my Mario history. It's fun. It's not performing especially well. They never currently sitting at a nice 131.
Mario?
But,
really?
Yeah, nobody pays attention to Mario.
Oh. Wait, you did that
the algorithm for some reason just absolutely hate.
You did that for SAG, right? Stone Age?
Yeah, Stone Age Gamer. So I can go to YouTube, I can search the literal name of my video, and it won't show up in search.
Well, you didn't pay, so.
Rick?
Exactly. It's all fucking. But I am very proud of it. Another 23 minutes. 23:50. But it's 24 minutes long. They're documentary style. They're not conversational things. They're tend to be like television. So, documentary. The series, and it was an interesting week. It was an interesting one to put together because in trying to make documentary style content, it's not something that I ever really gave consideration before I started making it myself. Was the whole narrative aspect. How do you tell history of something, make it interesting for people to watch at the same time without just doing conversational nonsense? Because the problem is that when you type in Mario Brothers Retrospective, you're going to get 100 million. Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. So I played this game when I was a kid and it was fucking shit and I hated it. And here's a bunch of memes and stuff plastered all over the screen. None of it's professional. It's like some dudes whose microphone sounds like this. I'm talking to a coffee can. And I play Mario and when he's got a red hat and this one's got a blue eye. It's fucking stupid. It's all that. Just nonsense.
I really am disappointed to hear there isn't more respect for Mario in the YouTube world.
This is everything. There's not just Mario. Yeah. This is I did the same thing with the Zelda retrospective. It's look up a Zelda retrospective. It's got 5 million views, and it's some 15-year-old kid being like, "Hey guys, I played this one when I was a kid, and I thought it was pretty dope. And you fight this guy, and it's pretty cool. And I don't know, I think it's a 5 out of 5 kind of a game. One of the best ever. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, what happened to any degree of professionalism in this kind of thing? Just one of the reasons I decided to try and do this myself. And undertaking Mario Brothers one has been huge undertaking, which is really exactly what I was trying to avoid in the first place because the Zelda one was so hard. But the history of it is so complex, especially in the beginning, because I'm trying to tell it specifically from a North American perspective. Like, the idea is like, this is what it was like as a North American gamer experiencing these games as they came out, but also trying to give enough historical context to what was happening in Japan at the time, because in the beginning, these games were literal years behind in coming to North America. So, like, we're getting Super Mario Brothers 2, and Japan's already playing Super Mario Brothers 3. So, like, there's an entirely different evolution between the way people experience these games in other parts of the world, as opposed to how they actually evolved, was, how they came out in Japan. And so trying to tell this story in a way that is not just makes sense, but it's also entertaining, without doing what a lot of things do, where it's just like, and here's talking heads, just here's interviews and talking heads, and here's just people talking about what happened at the time. And that is a very valid way of doing things, but it's considerably easier than trying to put it together as a thorough documentary storytelling. One of the books on video game history that I spent a ton of time reading years and years ago is Leonard Herman's Phoenix, the Fall and Rise of Video Games, which is an excruciatingly detailed book. It is extremely detailed, but it's not an entertaining read unless you're really into the subject, right? It's not like you're not hearing the history of video games as a narrative. You're just hearing this is the history of games as it happened in chronological order with lots of technical jargon. Yeah, this is the stuff. Whereas you can look at another book, Console Wars, by Blake Harris, I think his name is. Phenomenally entertaining book. Just an absolutely wonderful read, because it treats this one specific piece of video game history and tells it as a narrative where all the people involved were characters, right? It's not an 100% historical accurate account of it, because nobody took notes during these meetings, right? Nobody knows exactly what these people said to one another. But it takes this piece of history and tells it as a narrative, which is super awesome. But then when they turn that into a TV series, they just turned it into a Talking Heads documentary, which was supremely disappointing, because you could actually make a movie out of that and make it interesting. That's been the goal of making this Stone Age Gamer Archaeology series, to take those stories of a specific piece of video game history and write them into a documentary-style narrative that is interesting and informative enough without doing what I do usually, which is say way too much about everything, right? So I got to edit my scripts down and remove things that aren't necessary, but also include as much historical context as possible to make them make sense. So it's been it doesn't do much for our brand, I guess, right? 131 views, yay! It's fucking pitiful in comparison to what most other dipshits on YouTube that just, hey guys, like and subscribe. It is a fucking fraction of that nonsense. But it is a very interesting, I guess, intellectual exercise that I get a lot personally out of. So while I am eternally bitter that this gets zero traction on YouTube, I am still very much enjoying the work that I do. And if you are interested in seeing what that's like and hearing what I personally find fascinating history of the Mario Brothers series, give it a look or watch, whatever.
No bitterness detected here at all.
Extremely bitter. The internet's awful.
That's the problem. It is awful. It's a breeding ground of awful.
It is. It's getting worse. I couldn't tell you why. None of my social media posts in the last week have done anything, except for this one post I put up today where there's a handful of people online who don't like the company that made this product that I posted. So now it's blowing up, just people hating and hating and hating and hating on this company that makes this product. But, you know, the post about this new video with Mario and Donkey Kong all over it, it got 4 likes on Twitter and a whopping 791 impressions. That means on this planet, 791 people even saw it. Whereas getting under 1,000 on something like that used to be unheard of, but it just keeps getting worse. And I'm not changing anything, but it's just every single post that we make is getting less engagement, unless there's hate involved somewhere, which is
that or money.
Awful.
You need to pay for
that,
and that's the other.
But that's the thing. Stone Age Gamer has a blue check mark. We do pay.
Okay.
That just doesn't fucking matter, right?
Screaming into the void.
I really,
exactly.
Yeah, I wish I could offer more, but I'm just like, I no longer even try to make my social media account like do anything of value. I've reached the point where I'm like, I have a very small following, but they're like pretty engaged and loyal, and like I will take that at this point, because I've also seen how the changes have been occurring for other creators and content makers that do have significantly larger followings than me. And if it's any consolation, it is not just you guys.
Yeah, no question in my mind that it's just us. It's definitely not just us.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I hope that changes. What have you been watching otherwise?
Well, I mean, I guess it might as well get me out of the way first. I will try to be brief. As stated last time, I have finished The Acolyte. It's a very interesting show.
And that's it. Okay, moving on.
that's all I actually don't even know how much more I have to say about it. It had a lot of really interesting concepts in it. I think its execution is not great. It felt like it needed to be either a lot more episodes or a movie or two. Like, there were a couple of characters that got killed off in this amazing fight sequence, and I was shocked, but I didn't feel anything because we didn't get to know them. They were likable characters. We didn't get to know them very well. So them getting killed off felt like such a weird, like, it was like shocking, because it seemed like, well, here's a couple of characters that have an awful lot to offer. Never mind, they're dead. Very, very dead. And that, it worked for the shock value, but it seemed like a big missed opportunity. I genuinely enjoyed the show. I think that there are some very strange casting choices. There is the central characters are a pair of twins, both played by the same actress, who is, to put it nicely, not Tatiana Maslany.
I was just going to make that comparison. Yes!
To put it nicely, not good.
Very
I'm not
few
going to
can
say
compete
that
with her.
she's bad. On her own, she's not, she was fine on her own. The scenes where she was by herself, she didn't bother me in the least. But it fell apart when she had to do a scene with herself. It was like, this isn't working. I've seen this work. This ain't it. I'm sorry. And it seems like the kind of thing that they really needed to make sure worked before. Like, I could tell why they casted her, because she's very charismatic. She's interesting to listen to. But if you can't pull off acting against yourself in a show where you're going to need to act against yourself, then that's something that should have been taken into more consideration casting. But also, when they did a flashback of her as a kid, they had 2 different actors playing this character.
Oh.
What?
So, like, you
Were
got
they
the
twins?
twins, and they're identical twins, because we've now seen them as adults as the same exact person, right? So they're identical twins. but then we see them as younger, and they're two kids that don't really look alike.
Oh.
So,
No.
and I know it seems like a weird nitpicky thing, but like, that's one of those, like, fire and space, you guys can all just fuck off. This is really, that's the stupid nitpicky stuff. But like, a pair of identical twins that look identical in one time period and very different in another time period is one of those things that I just have to say, twins exist, right? We had the Olsen twins on fucking Full House when I was a kid. You tell them you couldn't find twins to play this role?
Listen,
Seriously?
the Olsen twins are robots. Everybody knows that.
They weren't real kids.
But it introduces a lot of interesting concepts. It also does what Star Wars shows have been almost universally doing great since the whole Disney Plus thing, is it introduces a fucking fantastic villain. Jason Mendoza from The Good Place is an amazing it's amazing villain.
Man, did you ever think you were going to say that out loud?
Seriously, like, hearing you say that, I have to let you know, I had to look up him in this role and, like, speaking in another, like, interview, because I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was really eerie, and that guy is a far better actor than I gave him credit for.
Oh my god, right? Because you don't even notice it in The Good Place because he's so good at playing that fucking dope. But oh my god, he's so good in this.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's really hard to play somebody stupid like that.
Yeah, and do
like
it
that
well.
is a
without it
that
being
is a
character.
talent.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. I do that every day.
Yeah, so he is a great villain. It introduces all this really cool expanded universe lore stuff into live action. We get to see Kyber crystal bleeding. We get to see Darth Plagueis. We get to see all
Darth
kinds
Plagueis,
of
totally.
all kinds of interesting stuff for nerds. Cortosis armor, just really awesome. But there were just there were some writing bits that seemed real awkward. There's a lot of weird edits in this show. Episodes would just end, like not even like cliffhangery. They would just seem like they'd stop, and or they would just scenes would occasionally just stop and just move right on to the next one. Very jarring. There was just weird edits throughout this entire series, and they really didn't stick the landings, in my opinion. One of the main characters is a really, really great Jedi named Sol. I don't remember the actor's name. It's from Squid Game.
Yeah.
And he learned English just to do this role, and he's wonderful in the part. He's just absolutely wonderful in the part. But I feel like I know what they were trying to convey with him at the end, but it just came off similar to like Anakin's fall to the dark side, Revenge of the Sith, where it's just like, wait, and now we're doing this? What? Wait, no, these two things don't connect. How did you get from point A to point B? Why is this guy doing these things? And it just kind of didn't work. They did this flashback sequence where he, according to the director, as far as I know, he was scared and he thought that this witch was trying to kill this little girl. So he stabbed the witch and killed her. Witch wasn't trying to kill the little girl. She was trying to teleport her away to safety. And but when you watch the scene, it just kind of doesn't read that way. It just reads like a whole bunch of confusion, which I guess is supposed to be confusing, but not that kind of confusion. More like, why is any of this happening? Not, what is happening? What is that? Why is she smoke? And also his entire character was just like really, really interested in, he just needed to protect this girl that he didn't know for reasons. It seemed so out of character with somebody who seemed like he was an excellent Jedi and very in tune, right and wrong, his feelings. And it was really, really clunky. And it was very unfortunate because by the end, it made him seem like an extraordinarily unlikable character, which was very much at odds with everything they seemed to set up with him in the first half of the season, where he, there's all this interesting intrigue going on with the Senate not trusting Jedi Order, and you know that they're going to run into some kind of Sith-related problem, and the Jedi said in episode Phantom Menace that the Sith have been extinct for millennia, and we know that that's wrong. But like, this is kind of showing how the Sith existed right underneath their noses for all that time, and the Jedi didn't know about it. And all of it just comes off weirdly clunky. It's not clunky. That's a Star Wars deep cut for y'all, but just kind of clunky. I'm still really glad it happened, and I really wanted to get a second season because this woman, Leslie Headland, she has a really good head for this stuff. Like, she really does. The story she was trying to tell was fantastic, and the action sequences were unbelievably well done. There was so much cool lightsaber fighting and like martial arts, kung fu type stuff thrown in for good measure, which was just extraordinarily fun to watch. But just like I think we've said before about Taika Waititi, she just needs somebody else there to be like to say no, or to poke around and be like, this doesn't work. You need to do better than this. And there either needs to be more goddamn episodes or turn into something else entirely, because these truncated seasons of shows that we keep running into are problematic. I feel like a lot of TV shows aren't getting the chance that they breathe, because there used to be. When was the last time you watched a new show with filler episodes?
What is filler?
None. They don't do that anymore.
They don't do that anymore, but filler episodes were important. Filler episodes were the world building. Filler episodes, they don't advance the overarching plot extraordinarily well, but they're also what make you feel like you've spent time with characters and create these relationships.
Kris, thank you for saying this. See, honey. See?
I'm not saying that. Okay, we will discuss this in the second half. Okay,
Kris, everything you just said, I need you to repeat that again later when we talk about Avatar. Cool?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Wow.
But yeah, Acolyte is an interesting show that suffers from the same thing that seems to happen to a lot of shows.
Literally feel my brain tingling. Yeah.
I would like to see that stuff. But yeah, I still recommend it. I mean, if you like Star Wars and you're not a fucking goon like the weirdos on the internet that, I swear to God, they were like picking this show apart for the dumbest fucking reason. But like, there's actual flaws you could be looking at and saying, I don't like this show because of X, Y, and Z. But they're like, oh no, there was fire in space. Like, yeah, there always is in Star Wars. George Lucas never gave a shit about that stuff. Ki-Adi-Mundi's not supposed to be here at this time. He's supposed to be 400 years old or something. Like, well, yeah, that was written on the back of a trading card once in like 2001. It's never been canon. They're allowed to make this shit up now because there's Star Wars. Like, there's a lot. Darth Plagueis showing up for some reason apparently ruins the legacy of Anakin Skywalker, which doesn't make a goddamn bit of sense, even if you hilariously misread the comic book panel that suggested that Darth Sidious was the one who created Anakin in the first place. It's all just a whole big mountain of stupid. If you're not a crazy person in the bad way, Acolyte has a lot to offer as far as being an entertaining TV show, or at the very least go on YouTube and watch the fight scene, because they're fucking great. And that's the end.
I also just had to add that I liked that Jason, or what is his name? Manny Jacinto as the villain, didn't take himself super seriously.
Okay.
Like, he had a lot of like snarky comebacks.
Oh my God, they were so good too.
Where, like, you know, other Star Wars properties, you would, you know, be confronted with the villain, and there would be like a very dramatic moment where like the hero's confronting the villain, and, you know, it would be this big dramatic moment. Whereas in this show, it's just like she would say something about like, you know, he did something that was terribly wrong, and he would like flip it on its head and point out that like she made mistakes too, and like do it in this really kind of flippant way that was just very enjoyable to watch.
He kills Soul's Padawan. Soul was the Squid Game guy, right? He kills his Padawan, and she was just a kid, and that's what he says. He says she was just a child. And he says, "Brought her here."
Damn.
Well, you kind of have a point.
Dropping truth bombs in Star Wars now.
Damn.
Honestly,
But
I
it's
like that
also
because that's more interesting, and I feel like a lot of times for me, Star Wars characters feel like kind of flat. That makes him kind of fun.
Oh yeah, that's what makes him so fun, is that, like, yeah, he starts sounding like he's making these real good points until you realize that deep down underneath it all, like, he really is the mustache twirling villain that wants to, like, he talks about he wants the freedom to be able to use the Force the way he wants to. Like, okay, in principle that sounds great, except he's a Sith. The way he wants to use the Force is to murder people and take over everything. So, like, he's a really good villain. Really good and interestingly written villain. And the fact that Darth Plagueis showed up at the very end, this little cameo, is super interesting, because Darth Plagueis was Emperor Palpatine's Sith Lord, right? He was the one who trained him.
Sure.
So I find that very interesting. So, like, is he this guy's apprentice, or is the stranger Chimere, whatever, Bortles, is he the one in charge? Like, it's really difficult we don't know. It left a lot of interesting questions open for a second season show. That said, I hope it gets it.
With that said, we'll probably not get a second season.
Yeah, it got so much hate, but I don't think it was. I think that was just a really loud sect of morons, and not, like, I think it got watched fairly decently. I want it to be followed up in some way, shape, because it introduced so much interesting stuff. Because this is not a Skywalker saga. There were some cameos from characters that existed during this time period, like Ki-Adi-Mundi and eventually Yoda, just who he had to be in eventually because he was definitely alive during this time. This is so far before any of the Skywalker stuff. It's just neat to see a live action Star Wars situation that wasn't directly related to anything else we had seen before. Because the universe is huge. Let's start telling stories outside of this one little piece of it. What else is going on in the galaxy? Let's go.
It's such a big galaxy.
Is it far, far away?
It could be. Long time ago.
Yeah. Long time.
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I hope that wasn't too terrible.
No.
Yeah, it was painful, but it wasn't too long. All right, Karen, what about you?
Okay. I watched the
Doctor
second
Who.
season of, well, we both did, of We Are Lady Parts.
Nice.
Holy freaking crap, you guys. This show is so good, and more people need to watch it.
Do they? I have absolutely no idea how well the show did. As far as I know, everybody watches.
I don't know. I've never heard anybody else talk about it.
It's
but
true. It is so good.
it's so well written. The actors are so talented, so funny. The music continues to kick ass. They wrote a song this season about Malala.
Nice.
One of the bass player who has a daughter, a teenage daughter, and the daughter did something wrong. I can't remember what. And they were talking to her about it, like, in a disciplinary kind of conversation. And she's like, "Why did you do this?" And she's like, "Well, we have to, like, reject the establishment, and it's what Malala would have done." Like, teenagers, like, twisting logic to try and justify their own behavior. So that inspired them to write a song called Malala Made Me Do It. And it was like a country western song.
What?
And they did like a video for it, or at least in the show. And Malala herself had a cameo in the show.
Shut up.
Showed up, and I was like, "Oh my god, that really looks like Malala. Oh my god, that is Malala."
That's awesome.
So, like, for that alone, the show should be watched. But there's so much more. So the second season kind of deals with, like, the band is, like, starting to gain a head of steam, starting to get a following, and reaching that place that a lot of bands do where they're, like, they feel like they're on the edge of something, but they need a little, like, help to get to the next level. So they're like, they want to record an album, but they don't have the money, and they can't seem to get gigs that will pay enough to for them to have to afford the studio time. And part of this is because, so, like, each character has their own, like, really organic story that, like, fits in with the band, but also, like, fleshes out their characters as individuals and, like, are kind of really interesting things that you haven't necessarily seen a lot of before. So, like, Syra, who's the lead singer and songwriter, she's, like, got a conflict where her friend, Mumtaz, is the manager of the band, but Mumtaz has kind of taken the band as far as she can at, like, the level of, you know, she's just starting out as a manager, so she can only do so much for them. And so, like, Syra's stuck between, she meets this other manager who is, like, works with actual labels and could actually take the band somewhere, but it would mean she'd have to, like, stop working with her friend. Meanwhile, Mumtaz is trying to figure out, like, she started this project of being a band manager going along, like, to help her friends, but now she's kind of, like, not sure that that's what she wants to keep. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do now that she's a little bit more invested in this world. And she ends up, like, heading up this really, really cool project. Aisha, who's the bass player, has this plot line about she's gay, but she's not out. And, like, she's struggling a lot with her girlfriend and her girlfriend's feelings about, you know, her not being out, and her parents, and would her parents be okay with it, and her faith, because, like, being Muslim and gay is, like, a whole thing. And she ends up in the end deciding, like, her girlfriend, like, kind of puts the pressure on her to want her to come out. And she ends up deciding that it's not the right time for her, or that she's not comfortable with doing it. And then everything turns out okay, which I feel like is not a story that you see in that space a lot.
I would be honest with you and say it's the first time I've heard of that, which is pretty cool because that is a very real thing.
Yeah, and normally it's like, I don't know, it goes one way or the other. They decide not to come out and, like, people break up, or they decide to come out and everything's shiny and happy. Like, it's just more nuanced than that. It was more kind of true to life. I said Aisha was the bass player, but she's the drummer. Bisma is the bass player, and she's the one with the teenage daughter, and she's struggling, like, with her own sense of self, which I found super, super, super relatable, because she's like, she doesn't like being seen as, like, the mom of the band, even though she is a mom. Like, she feels like she doesn't have an identity of her own, so she's spending this season kind of exploring, like, how she wants to be seen by the world and what she wants to, you know, what she wants to put out there as herself rather than, like, in relation to other people in her life. And Amina, who's the guitar player, and, like, she's this girl, what's her name? I lost my phone. The actress who plays her is so hysterical. Kris loves her.
Oh my god, her eyes in particular.
She's so expressive. Anjana Vasan. She's, like, always been, like, a super sweet, good girl her whole life. And so this season she's decided it's her villain era, except it's just kind of hilarious because her villain era is, like, very tame. But also, you know, somewhat empowering, and, like, you know, she's at least making her own decisions, and she ends up dating this guy. She ends up dating this white guy for a little while, and she's like conflicted about what it means. Like, will her like faith and culture accept that she's dating a white guy, or is it like that's part of her villain era? She's rebelling by dating a white guy, and then it turns out that the guy is kind of sort of fetishizing her as like it's exciting to be with a Muslim woman when that's like kind of not accepted to have an interracial or an interfaith relationship like that. And so she's like, but that's the only reason he's dating her. So she ends up dumping him and going with the Muslim guy that she liked in the first place.
Aww.
But it's just, it was so rich. Everything, like the storytelling was so rich. The characters were like fully developed. There was not a moment wasted. There was not a line wasted. Everything was just so real, raw. Lots of things that you like haven't seen before. Like the representation on the show is just fucking stellar. And I love this show, and I want it to go 1 million seasons, and I want everybody to watch it. So,
well, if Karen endorses it, then it must be good.
It's just so freaking good.
It reminds me so much of Scrubs. Like the humor is so very Scrubs. Yeah, because obviously the setting is extraordinarily different, but it does the same, like, almost cartoon type of shit all the time, and then it interacts with it in weird and interesting ways. Like, every now and then something will just make a cartoon sound effect, just like they would do with Scrubs. But then out of nowhere, it'll take one of those silly, completely unrealistic cartoon-related things that somebody can do and apply it to a dramatic situation and play off of it that way. Like, it reminds me of Scrubs in the best possible way. And the one main character, girl with the eyes, Amina, yeah, she narrates the show similar to the way JD narrates Scrubs. So, like, you get a lot of that similar kind of vibe at it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Scrubs was big in the show, just because it seems to work out that way. It's brilliant. If you like Scrubs, at least give the show a shot. It is a very, very different setting, but it's a similar type of humor and structure that I think just works extremely well. I find the show endlessly endearing. I never, obviously we're on season 2, right? So we haven't had quite the, Dr. Cox How to Save a Life moment. But I could see this show getting, like I could see it getting, if it's allowed to. It does seem like it's, as far as I know, it's doing just fine. I don't know how to even tell if everybody's watching things on weird streaming services. I doubt the show's all that expensive, but at the same time, like, I do want to see this continue. I was shocked that it got a second because it seemed like it was going, which was devastating. When we watched the first season, I was like, well, this is great. This is really good. And the second season lived up to the first, I think, in every way, and I think they left off in a really interesting place to see where it could all go. Like, it didn't wrap it up permanently, but it did wrap it up in a way that would be like, if this is where the show ends, then it's a satisfying enough conclusion, but there's a lot. And it's just funny as shit. What?
I'm just looking up its bona fides, as you would say, and it has won some BAFTAs, which are British awards. So
it's a British show.
Yes.
Okay.
But
I wonder.
It's also a Peacock thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's on Peacock here, which I think you can watch via Hulu. I'm not sure, but anyway, I forgot to mention my one moment that, like, just put the whole season over the top for me, which is Mina has a friend outside of the band who's like very traditional Muslim. She's married, she's pregnant, she's like, they're expecting their first kid, and as Amina sort of explores her like wilder side, she feels like this friend who's outside of the band is judging her, and she ends up like confronting her friend, and the friendship survives. Like, it's okay to like air your differences with your friends. But she ends up going to a birthing class with her friend. And they open the meeting or the class with everybody shares something about how they're feeling about their pregnancy. And it's very like beautifully honest about like, people are like, I'm afraid I'm going to be a bad mom, or like, I'm, one lady's like, I'm just super horny, which like happens to pregnant ladies. And they're like, they're traditional Muslim women. There's not a safe space anywhere for them to say these kinds of things. So like, it's a nice moment. But then they get around to Amina, and she's like, oh, I'm not pregnant, I'm just here with my friend. And she ends up opening up, and they have this moment where everybody is like talking about their bodies and like their fears about how their bodies are changing and like things that are going on in their bodies. And the leader of the group is like, all right, we need to like kind of get this all out in the air. So she has everybody stand up and just start chanting the word vagina over and over until they are like comfortable saying it.
Amazing.
And the way Amina is like empowered by this, she just starts making like really like enthusiastic gestures and faces, just like vagina. It's fucking hysterical and also so super real. Like, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who are like, they can't say the words for body parts. Like, that's just how they came up, and they're super uncomfortable about it, and there's no good reason for it. So it was just such an amazing, real, hysterical moment. I don't know. I just love this show.
Well, I have to say,
that
I
was
also
a character trait
like
of Elliot in Scrubs. She couldn't say vagina. We said vajingo.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Another Scrubs parallel for you. Moving on.
I was just going to say, I like hearing you talk about it, though, because in getting to what I watched, and then Evan, if you'd like to finish us off, but I finished The Last of Us, and it was incredible. I loved how it ended. It had a sort of, I don't want to say it's an ambiguous ending. It's definitely an ending that made you question, like, the motives of Joel, the main lead, like the male lead, and then, like, kind of what the future is for these two characters. I thought that some of the things that happened in the show, there were just some really beautiful and tragic moments amidst, like, good storytelling and interesting horror elements. So I loved it, and I was sad to see the end of the season, and I immediately looked to see if there would be a season 2, because I know that there was like another game after the first one. It appears that there may be, which would be great. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to try something else now. And I tried the show Britannica, and I didn't even make it through the first episode. So it was just, I don't know if it was like my headspace or if it was as generic as it felt, but nothing about it felt new or appealing. It felt like it was riffing off of things that like have already been done. The premise of the show is like Romans invading Britain before, in the time of Druids, if that tells you anything. So Druids are in the show. And like, I've watched Vikings, I've watched Spartacus, I've watched, I'm trying trying to think of anything. Black Sails I've watched. All of these movies that have, or all of these TV shows that have like historic elements, and then you go into even things like Game of Thrones, and like after watching all of these different shows that have element like Outlander, like this just felt generic. Nothing felt like it was new. It felt like not even, God, it wasn't even generic. It was like it was trying, but it was just missing the mark every single time. The plot wasn't intriguing. The characters weren't very exciting. Like, the production was meh. Like, it was just, it didn't do anything for me. And it was too many plot lines right out the gate in the first episode. Like, not catching my interest. Like, there was one main character who was a young girl, and she's coming from one of the Druid villages, and like I think it would have been cool to follow just her story, but instead we're also following another story, and I don't know. It just did nothing for me. So I was happy to finish The Last of Us. Glad that I got to watch something as well developed and intriguing as that show. And it was definitely something that really like created a strong point of comparison for other television that was less than great. So that was pretty much my television watching experience. But that being said, it makes me think when I listen to you talk about this show, Karen, that like maybe that's what I should be watching next, because now I'm looking for something, and I
100% girly.
Yeah, I love
There's
the
only
idea.
6 episodes, like, and that is kind of a bummer. Like, I can't say I want more because I can't, I don't know that, like, if the season was longer, that, like, it would be as good. It's a very tight show.
Yeah.
So maybe 6 episodes is the right, and it's also British, and that's just what they do.
I was gonna say.
But I just want more of it because, like, it's so good. I want more of it. I want 19 6-episode seasons, and I want them now.
Heard. Well, that was my television stuff, so hopefully I'll have more to report next time.
Okay.
Honey, what about you? Also, I watch a lot of stuff that Evan watches, so when he's watching things,
Yeah, you're sort of peeking in, but I'm actually going to talk about something that you really didn't watch. I am pretty much caught up on my adventures with Superman, which is an anime style retelling of Superman and the beginning of his career. It's his younger adventures, if you will. I am like my brother, my sister-in-law, my nephew came over, and he sat down and they started watching this. And I watched the first season when it originally came out, and I enjoyed it. But it didn't grab me enough to say, oh my God, I need to see season 2. It was an entertaining half-hour cartoon that I could just put on, eat my lunch, and continue on my way. It wasn't what ends up happening when I watch a show that's a reimagining of a character, especially something like Superman. Like, they just go hog wild and try to make it their own thing, and you can't really do that with Superman because all of the stories have been told. So you have to just put your stamp on it, and they're doing this one artistically. It has a heavy anime influence, and they are speeding up the relationships in Clark's life. So Lois and Clark are already dating, and so on and so forth, and they're speeding through, their careers at the Daily Planet, and it feels like they're trying to introduce Superman to a younger crowd, which is great. I'm all for that. But they are also touching on a lot of heavier topics that I feel would be done better in a slightly longer format. They are going in directions that I'm not familiar seeing in the comics, which is great. But I don't feel like they're giving the story enough time to breathe. It feels like they're just trying to power through the half hours. I am enjoying it quite a bit though, and I think that this is the kind of thing that will bring on a newer audience, which is, what I always want for especially characters like Superman and Batman, and when all of the stories have been told over and over and over again, it's nice to see something new-ish. They're still staying true to what Superman, especially a younger Superman's character, was and still is, and it's nice that they're paying homage to all of the stories that have come before. I just wish that they had spent a little more time or given it a little more breathing room.
It sounds like they really respect the source material, though.
And that's the thing, like they do. What I also like is I only recognize one voice, so it doesn't take me out. Like every once in a while, like if I'm watching something, there was a Crisis on Infinite Earths, like 3-part movie, and all of the superheroes are in that, and Jensen Ackles is Batman. And every time Batman's on screen and he talks, I don't see Batman. I see
Dean Winchester, yeah,
in a mask, and that takes me out of it. I'm sure all of the voice cast is, they have done other things, but the only one that I recognize is Jack Quaid, who is Clark Kent and Superman, of course, but he is so new to me that the stuff that he is, like, he's on The Boys, and the stuff that
and Lower Decks.
What's that?
And he's Lower Decks.
Yeah.
He's what's his face?
Boimler.
Those things are not so familiar to me that it's overpowering the character that I'm watching on screen, and I really like that. Everybody's doing a really good job. The artwork is great, especially if you like that anime spin to things. And it's got a lot of heart, and it's like I said, it's staying true to the character. So I can't ask for anything more.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, because I never imagined you'd watch something that had like an anime art style to it.
Every once in a while, like it has to really like. Okay, so like, what's that other one that we were just Exploding Kittens? Mm-hmm. Exploding Kittens came out with a cartoon, and it's got a very unique art style, and like it really needed to be funny. And it's just not funny enough to get me like fully hooked. I watched an episode and a half, and I'm gonna try, but like that's another thing. The guy who plays his name's Tom Ellis. He plays Lucifer in the show Lucifer. He's the voice of Godcat. Like, I recognize that voice because I've watched a bunch of Lucifer. So it sort of takes me out, and I find it funny that he's now playing God. But that art style is too much for me, for it not to be really, really funny for me. So we'll see.
Interesting, because I
couldn't imagine how I saw that show up on the Plex. It's like, how in the world are they going to make Exploding Kittens?
It's all imagery. Like they made a story. Okay, the story is there's a board in heaven that says God has to go to Earth and mix it up with
he's
lost
humans. Touch with his humans,
and he's got to. So they send him to Earth in the form of a cat. At the same time, we find out in episode 2, Satan. Or
Beelzebub.
Hell has the same style of board, and Beelzebub is just doing really meh things when it comes to being evil, and they're sending Beelzebub to Earth as Hellcat. So that, like, mayhem ensues. It's cute, but like every episode you'll see like one of the card imagery. Like, that's what they're doing. Like, first episode there was that Transformer looking cat robot. Like, I get it. I see what you're doing. You're shoehorning a story around this card game. Okay.
That doesn't sound.
I really wanted it to be, because I mean, Exploding Kittens is fucking funny. It's funny. It's a funny card game. But when you're I guess they're trying to rein it into story. It's just not working for me yet. So we'll see.
I still like it. I'm easily amused. I don't know. My standard for that show was pretty low, so I guess that's why. But well, I guess that covers a few TV shows there. Y'all want to take a break?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Cool. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Hi everyone, Kris here. Podcast listening is free, but podcast creation is not. That's why the Geekade Patreon exists. In an effort to help us pay the bills, we've got a Patreon page set up where you can gain access to our monthly podcast topic schedule, get early access to many of our shows, and more. If you'd like to help support Geekade and keep these shows running week after week, head over to the Geekade Patreon page, linked in the show notes of this very podcast. And now, here's a quick look at some of the other original content available now from our partners and Geekade.com.
First up, if you're a fan of driving around in a giant polygon, chances are you're either an Elon Musk stan for some dumb reason, or, more likely, you've played the Super NES classic, Stunt Race FX. As the effects in the name implies, this is a non-Star Fox SNES game, those that exist, that utilized the Super FX chip to create fully 3D polygonal gameplay on the SNES. But, do you know what Stunt Race did all on its own without the use of a special effects chip? A fantasy array of songs featuring synthesized banjo. So, if you want to know what it feels like to listen to some sweet 16-bit bluegrass while driving a monster truck underwater, be sure to listen to Waveback episode 175, Stunt Race FX.
I'm into a fantasy array.
The way you were saying FX was just it was just weird for me. I don't know why.
I don't know. All of that was weird for me.
I felt the same thing. It was FX.
Yeah, you're saying FX.
Whereas
but it's,
I'm like me.
It says FX.
Yeah, FX.
You weren't saying FX. You're saying effects.
Oh, well, should I do it over?
No. Next.
No.
Carnies.
Next. Carney.
Carnies.
You're
Talk
good
to me
at
about
this.
carnies, Evan.
If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know the problems I have with carnies.
You've got some
little
serious
hands.
ass carnies problem.
Especially carnies who hang out in malls.
So many problems.
But while my encounters typically end in violence,
I've seen him kick a carny.
how does Andy of the Weekend Rental Podcast deal with them? And what is he doing in the mall in the first place? What kind of fix is Ryan looking for? How waterproof is the TurboGrafx 16? Don't miss Weekend Rental episode 180, The Gamers Replay a Classic.
Finally, on an all-new Turning Tracks, it was Kris's pick, and he decided to go for one of his all-time favorite bands, Collective Soul. The thing is, he loves their music, but he merely tolerates their lyrics. But boy does he love their music! So, with a catalog of over 11 albums and EPs, how did he narrow down a playlist to just 10 songs to best represent their sound? What does Matt think of the band? What happens after we all come together and gel? And what kind of gel are we talking about here? LA Looks, Depp? Find out in Turning Tracks, episode 21, Collective Soul.
Remember Depp?
I remember the logo for LA Looks with all the whoosh lines.
That stuff was awesome. I hate hair gel and I still eat. Anyway, for all this and more from us and our partners, be sure to keep your eyes on Geekade.com.
Just gonna let you guys know I feel very out of touch. And we're back. We're back full of gravy. We've taken bathroom breaks. We've talked about hair gel, but none of us have sticky, spiky hair full of dandruff, I hope. Anyway, this evening we have a beautiful feature topic of Avatar the Last Airbender live action. Season 1, Episode 1, and or the whole first season, if you're crazy like we are, because I am.
It's been out for a while. We were behind the swing on this one.
That's fine. Okay, because I powered through this with Evan because he knew that once I started, I would not want to stop, even if I had some issues. So before I go any further than that, and once again mentioning that filler episodes are important, Kris and Karen, what was your takeaway from this show?
Okay, I should go first because I'm going to be completely useless in this conversation. I don't have the fondness and attachment for the original series that the rest of you do.
Blasphemy.
I have seen it. I saw it once, much later in life than the rest of people who love this show saw it. I liked it a lot, but I don't have that, like, oh my god, this is one of those things I love so much and they can't screw it up or I'm going to riot. Like, I just don't have that.
It's not sacred to you?
It's not sacred to me. So I thought the show was good, fine, fun. I thought the effects on the bending were cool. I thought the fighting was cool. I thought the actors were fine. And I'm sure that there are problems with the adaptation of the original into this, but I couldn't tell you what they are because, again,
that's
it's
it.
not
Mute her.
sacred to me.
She's done. No.
I told you I was useless, and now I'm going to shut up.
Well, buckle up because you're going to find out all of your questions will be answered.
No. I'm going to curb. Well, maybe Kris won't, but I'm going to try and curb myself. So, Kris, what were your thoughts?
I didn't hate this show nearly as much as you probably did.
No, I see. Okay. Okay.
I feel like when we originally watched this, you watched it and you were like, oh, Angie's going to be so mad when she sees this.
I just naturally assumed you were going to hate it because it's not super faithful in a lot of... If you're going to do this, just doing it one-to-one is silly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to do a live action version of this, then place some of your focus on what you can do in live action that works better in live action than animation, right? Play to the strength of the medium. And in a lot of ways, I think they did. There were some changes that I thought were fine, that didn't really bother me. There were other changes that I looked at and said, you have made things demonstrably worse, and I don't know why you have done this. Particularly Azula.
Yeah.
I don't know why Azula's in season 1. She doesn't need to be there. And the last thing in the world you want to do with that character is show her human side this early. Mm-hmm. She is terrifying in the original series and a terrifying villain because there's no cracks in her armor. She does not give a shit about anything. She is just a fucking sociopath. And she's terrifying and extremely powerful. And those cracks don't start to show until very late in the show, which makes her so much more scary, Like, when someone that powerful and together finally starts losing it, it really means something. But they're humanizing her straight off the bat, and, well, that kind of doesn't feel... That doesn't come across... Like, I'm not scared of this character. She does not intimidate me in any way, shape, like she did in the cartoon, so I feel like they're really kind of screwing her up. Iroh was also a challenge for me because I love him. I love Mako's performance in that cartoon so much. Mm-hmm. But I think I like this dude better than the guy they got to replace Mako in the cartoon, right? Mm-hmm. Who's trying and failing, I think, miserably to replicate Mako's voice because I don't know why you get a white dude to do that, but whatever. I'm not in charge of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I don't make these decisions. But if I were in charge of replacing somebody with such a thick Asian accent, probably try to find somebody with a thick Asian accent and not get a white dude to do a thick Asian accent. But I digress. I do really like this guy. It's a very different take on Iroh. So he feels like such a different character because Mako was irreplaceable. Mm-hmm. But I do also like, for the most part, the direction they take. He's not quite as wise and endearing, but I did enjoy him. I like the kid who's playing Zuko. He's such a punk. He's such an emo brat. I want to see what else he's got, right? Because season 2 is where Zuko gets interesting. Season 1, Zuko is maybe vaguely interesting occasionally,
but also kind of a whiny bitch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's a whiny bitch. And like this dude did whiny bitch real well. I want to see if he's got the rest of Zuko's character.
I expected him to do it more. Like, I actually thought he was a little tame for how whiny I remember Zuko being in the cartoon.
Right.
But I thought that I agree. Like, I thought he was doing a great job representing what, like, who Zuko is.
Aang's also a really tough one to get right. Like, that's not an easy character to translate to live action because so much of his character is like this. He's a kid who's wise beyond his years, but is also so animated. His eyes do so much work, and that's not something a human can do. So I like this kid way better than the kid that played Aang. But him and Katara, I wasn't super fond of. I didn't think either of them did a great job. They weren't necessarily bad, but they were both missing what made, like, I don't know the kid's name who played Aang, but
Gordon something.
Yeah, and Mae Whitman cartoon was also just like great. So that was. I think the guy who played Sokka is very Sokka.
Yes.
Yeah. So the kid who played Aang, his name is Gordon Cormier, I guess, or Cormier. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I meant like I don't know the actor who played him in the cartoon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know Katara was Mae Whitman. I have no idea the kid who played Aang.
Yeah, I have to look that up.
But there were things that they changed. Like I think the approach to Commander Zhao was really interesting. I really liked the direction they took him. Just less straight up mustache twirling villain, and I like that they showed how the war started in the beginning, because that's something that you can have that really cool fight scene in live action to kick off your show. Like, okay, I get that. That's a neat little extra thing we didn't get to see before, and showing that kind of action in live action pretty. A little odd that all the firebenders can just fly. That was one of those things that Azula did. That was like terrifying. Like, she just starts flying using her firebending as rockets, and everyone looks at her like, and this one is like, yeah, that's just a thing firebenders can do.
Yeah.
Like, okay, but you didn't need to do that. It wasn't that important to show that right here. Maybe leave a little something in your pocket for later. Just saying. I could go on, but I liked it. I did. And exactly what you were talking about before, like that I was talking about before, this did not have the room to breathe. Mm-hmm. It did better than, say, the movie. Again, that bar was so low it's 6 feet underground, but still, it missed a lot of. The fact that these characters liked each other so much, I knew because I watched the cartoon. When they've got this camaraderie by the end of the show, we didn't see them get there. We didn't see them go through what they call the filler episode. We didn't see them do all these things and then get to grow with them. We didn't get to see their relationships turn into what they became. And I think that was this show's biggest disservice. I could have dealt with everything else they did if they had just given it more time.
So with that being said, I have a question. Like, I personally believe that the relationships aren't where they, in the live action, are not where they were at the end of season 1 for the animated series. Okay, that's cannot be argued. I don't feel like they're trying at all to build any sort of relationships within the group. Like, they're just there and they're going through this together kind of thing. And the only relationship building that I see that they're trying to do is Iroh and Zuko. Everybody else is just hanging out together.
Yeah. I don't know that they're not trying, but they're definitely not succeeding.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can jump in for a second, I think one of the things that I really struggled with, for example, was like the secret tunnel right? So that was in season 2 originally, and that was part of the relationship development between Aang and Katara. And there was also the episode with the fortune teller where she says, like, oh, you will fall in love with a very powerful bender. And then, like, Sokka makes a comment, man, that's one powerful bender. Like, little things where they were kind of planting seeds. And none of that happened in this season. And also, like, nobody's mentioning, Aang hasn't fucking waterbended anything.
He hasn't bent yet.
He hasn't bent. It just sounds weird. Get bent. He doesn't bend. Aang doesn't waterbend. What the fuck is that? Like, I don't know. That really, really bothered me because that was part of how he and Katara like developed their relationship.
That was how they bonded. Just through waterbend. Yeah. But I will say on the other side of the spectrum, I thought Suki was amazing.
Yes,
that was. Great casting. The makeup on the Kyoshi Warriors looked fantastic.
Oh my god, it did.
Pile on more of that, please, because I love Suki in the original show. She's great, and I thought the actress they got to play her was outstanding.
Yeah, agreed.
And I also really liked. I thought her and Sokka had great chemistry. That was cool.
Yeah.
But again, it felt like there was more there. Animated series. Than this one, just because it almost everything seemed like such one-offs, and Suki seemed like more than that. I don't know.
Did you? How did you feel
Yue
about?
Is dumb. I've never liked. I don't like Princess Yue. And the only thing good that comes out of Princess Yue and Sokka is that line in the last season where he's like, "My girlfriend turned on the moon." And Zuko's like, that's rough, buddy. That's the only good thing that comes out of Princess Yue. And when I got to that, and this was like, I don't know, maybe they'll make it work in this one. Nah, they didn't either. This is dumb. Her and Sokka having some sort of romance that I'm supposed to feel something for when she sacrificed herself at the end it's nothing. It's no, stop it.
Well, also, we didn't even see her as the moon spirit.
Right.
So, like, that was another thing where I was kind of like, oh, maybe, did she not then? Like, I mean, because the fish is, okay, the moon's back, but, like, that was, like, the defining characteristic of her, like, departure, and I don't know, I just thought that was really weird.
Yeah, it kind of got glossed over at the end, but I do commend them for doing the giant fish monster. Like,
yeah.
M. Night Shyamalan didn't have the balls to do that. He was like, it's a big tidal wave. It's fine. This show's just like, nah, weird shit, giant fish monster. He's going to turn to a fish monster and fuck up the Fire Nation.
And he had weight to him. Like, it was like they looked at the special effects from, like, all the monster movies that have come out in the last fucking, like, decade. And they really paid attention, in my opinion, to, like, the movement of the monster, and I loved that about it. Like, I thought they did a great job on those special effects.
I didn't rewatch the ending, but I remember this being an issue with me. How they ended things, Zhao. I feel like they changed that in this live action, right? Like, didn't he like get stabbed or some shit like that, or how did he die in?
I was going to ask you because I couldn't remember.
I thought he got burnt. Like there was a fight.
Oh, in this one he got. In this one he literally he just got burnt and thrown into a river, like as a corpse.
Yeah,
over the. They were on the bridge, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Iroh takes him out.
Yeah, see, in the original, in the animated series, he's on the bridge and he's going to get swallowed up by the giant water spirit that Aang turned into, and Zuko offers to save him. Just looks him.
That's right.
Nope, I'd rather die. But he doesn't die. He winds up like in the afterworld. We see him again in Legend of Korra, where he's just been wandering around aimlessly for like 100 years, because that's what happened. And I felt like whatever they did in the show kind of made it so that happened. I thought that kind of sucked, but again, I'm not in charge of any major I don't.
Yeah. Well, I guess speaking as fans, it's like you said, one of the things that I really tried to keep in mind when watching this was what you mentioned previously, which is that this cannot be a 1-for-1. And like, you know, as a fan, I want to respect that they're trying to do something different. And I was really, like, initially, I'm not going to lie.
Were you though?
Yeah.
Because I spent more time watching this show with you going, honey, just breathe. Calm. It's okay. It's just another version.
Yeah, because stuff that I was like expecting that made sense for, like, I was frustrated more so, not that they, like, you know, they took out a lot of episodes in the first season and they changed things with like the Northern Air Temple, and what I kept doing was pausing and explaining, well, you know, in the original series this was important because this thing happened and this led to this later in this season, and like I just kept feeling as though there were important things that were being skipped over or combined in a way that like maybe didn't do enough to like build relationships or move the plot in a way that made sense to me anyway, because I know what's supposed to happen and what's coming. And so at first, like, I was really struggling to be okay with all of the differences because I felt like those differences were changing things. And then also because I really did not like the actress who played Katara. I understand that.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah, like, I understand that, you know, I had to have some grace for the fact that while I think the guy who's playing Sokka is fantastic, his name is Ian Owsley, I think. Mm-hmm. So he, like, nailed it. Loved him. Thought the likeness was good. Thought the energy was pretty good.
Is it me, or did he actually sound like the?
He did. He had a little bit of similarity there.
He tried.
Yeah.
He was trying.
Yeah.
So did Aang. He tried. Like everybody.
No.
Yes. I think you mean Ong.
I'm never. No. Everybody.
I have nothing else to contribute.
Everybody seemed to try, except Katara. Like, Katara was just acting as if she was
flat.
Any other show. Like,
she was flat. Like, the thing, one of the things
she was flat. She did not have spirit. She didn't have energy. Like,
right. And I was trying to be respectful of the fact that, like, some stuff doesn't translate, right? Like Aang, exactly what you said. He's so expressive. He's so high energy. There's something to be said about bringing that to the real live action approach and not like making him feel like a cartoon character in a bad way. So I appreciate that there's a part of this where you're dealing more with Aang's grief in this season, and like I can appreciate those differences and those changes, but I really, really disliked Katara, and I felt like she brought no personality, she brought no fire, and I understand she's a waterbender, but like she is a spicy girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she had spunk, for lack of a better term. Like she was a bit sassy and bossy, and all that made her endearing.
Yeah, she had heart.
She did. She didn't have didn't have any of that. Because you're right. The performance is flat, and you know who they did dirtiest of all, though. Boom.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Why did you dislike Boomy?
Well, the makeup was fucking awful.
Yeah.
Like, he just looked bad. But Boomy was wise. Mm-hmm. He wasn't just an asshole. Like, he was wise. And again, I didn't get to the point of rewatching that episode. But if I remember correctly, just wasn't part of it. It's just being kind of a prick. And then, like, they moved on. But, like, at the end of it, it was all in favor of teaching Aang some very important lessons, showing how wise and patient he really was. Like, especially when you see him again later in the show, when he's, like, just biding his time, because he understood what the situation was, and that inaction was an important thing to understand, that inaction can be just as effective as action in certain circumstances. Like, Boomy was a fascinatingly weird character in the original series, but fascinating nonetheless. And he was just this one-dimensional, creepy nutbag in the live-action show. Like, I couldn't believe how dirty they. That was my one, like, real legit.
I feel that was also a really big miscast. Everybody else was. I mean, like I like him as Jay in Ghosts. Like I think he's fine in that show. But like, I really wanted when I saw that Danny Pudi was going to be in this show, I thought he was going to be Boomy because I could see him going.
Yeah, I could see
far.
him going that way. But I do think he was very well cast.
And when he came out, and when he came out of the show, I was like, all right, that makes sense too. But seeing Jay, I was like, no, that's like I don't feel it. And everybody else, it was really close. Like I believed that they were trying to do justice to their characters, except
Boomy was just
Boomy and Katara
nonsense.
I was surprised. I do have something to add here, actually.
Yeah, girl.
I was surprised that that actor that they cast as Boomy didn't do a better job because he normally he has that capacity for kind of like off the wall comedy, which I remember being a big part of Boomy's character in the animated series, and
our kids loved that episode.
Yeah, they rewatched the shit out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, putting, I'm going to say his name, Utkarsh Ambedkar in there, he's a funny guy.
He is.
And I didn't get a lot of that. I got, he's an old creepy weirdo that's kind of, vindictive, and none of the, enthusiasm or, kind of off-the-wall zaniness out of him.
Underlying kind.
Yeah, it breaks my heart to hear people say that he was creepy and vindictive because that was so not Boomy and man, and that, you know what got me too, Kris? You know how there's the lines that you just love from the episodes? Every now and then there was one that would stand out. He never says, Boomy, you're a mad genius.
Right? He never says it.
I'm that. Yeah, so it didn't speak to their history, in the same way, and he seemed very angry. And again, I feel as though there is a little bit more of a serious tone to this and approaching things, from a more heavy tone in this show. So I get it, but, there's...
It felt to me like a checkbox. We have to have this character here, but we don't like him. So we're just gonna. It seems like the show didn't like. Showrunners didn't like their character.
Well, he was the most cartoony character on the cartoon. Aang was very youthful and joyous and whatnot. And that made.
Aang, how dare you?
Yeah, no, don't do that.
What I'm saying is, if they were to push it that far in live action, it would come off very weird. Boomy is I don't know if they could pull off live action, the animated version in live action.
They could have to a degree.
They could have tried better than they did.
They definitely could have done better than they did. They definitely could have shown how impressive of an earthbender.
Oh my god! Yeah,
there were things during the fight between Aang and Boomy that were showing off the real potential of what earthbender could be in very interesting ways. When he just falls backwards and into the ground and then drills his way back up. His mastery was super cool, and you didn't really get that.
It seems like they only paid attention or only tried with firebending.
Well, that was my complaint.
Was the waterbending master fight against Katara was really. I think the waterbenders wound up looking super cool too, and we got to see a lot of really great airbending stuff. And when they showed off that scene in the beginning, it was really neat to see a bunch of fully fledged airbenders fighting. That was very neat. I loved all the effects and choreography of that. Again, I really liked how they choreographed the fight at the end between Katara and what's his face, the Paku. But at the same time, she didn't have any of the acting part of it. Didn't carry any of the weight that fight did the first time around, or at least not. I won't say any. It was effective. It's not as effective as it should have been.
I made Evan rewatch the fight from the animated version after watching that episode because I was like not happy. So
and that was the thing.
But
as
they
we
also
watched,
did recreate like several of the shots, like one to one, which I
they
thought was
did.
very cool.
And I will say my opinion, and I tried to relay this, and as we rewatched it, she was a better fighter in the live action than she was in the animated. Like, they showed her more in control and knowing what she was supposed to doing, and had a more variety of badassery in the live action.
And this was the thing. So Evan made a really good point with that, because I did end up coming around and agreeing to that argument. But for me, I felt like the reason I was frustrated with that fight wasn't necessarily the bending. I really didn't like the airbending, the way that it moved. It was very slow in a lot of instances throughout the season. But I also I can't be mad about, I'm not holding that against the show. I was just like, oh man, I kind of hoped, because Aang was so fluid in the cartoon, but I get it.
Yeah.
Some of that's just not going to translate without looking absolutely trashy. But I felt like with the waterbending, there were times where that too felt slow and not as refined or well done. And not necessarily as responsive as the firebending was. But I think that was just a lot of the bending in general. I think fire just appeared to be an easier effect in a lot of ways for people to generate. And when they did that fight, I actually felt like, holy shit, this is kind of what I've been looking for with waterbending all season. But Katara's lack of heart was what got to me. That was the thing that really bothered me with the fight, because once it was over, I was I wasn't that excited during this whole fight. But it was, like you said, there were points where it was shot for shot, the fight that they had in the animated series. And I remember being so excited and being yeah, cheering for her. And in this one, I was like, girl, get your shit together. I just... But then when we did it side by side, I was like, okay, this was actually a pretty good fight. But again, it was her acting. So
they tried. And,
yeah.
And that's why I'm looking forward to the next season, right? Because...
yeah.
If they take to heart what they learned from doing this one, there's a lot of potential to be good.
Yeah,
hey, if Danny Rand got better from season 1 to season 2 of Iron Fist, anything is possible.
Still don't believe it.
You're still slinging that fucking lie. Stop it.
And to your point, Kris, I said that to Evan too after the season ended. I said, there's a lot of things here, Aang and Katara have zero chemistry right now, but that doesn't mean that can't happen. The waterbending can happen in between seasons, and there's still plenty that can develop and be done here. I think the fear that I have was just Toph is coming next season, and if they fuck that up, this show is dead in the water.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they know that too.
Yeah,
they seem pretty well aware they get Toph right.
Yeah, because
that's not going to be easy.
No, and that's the thing. They what you said about Iroh, he grew on me. I initially just had a really hard time with his cadence and the fact that he wasn't what I expected, because I knew I was attached to Iroh's character. I didn't realize to what extent I would be affected by not getting the Iroh that I wanted. So that took a while for me to get used to.
It makes so much sense, because even in the confines of the cartoon, why is Iroh the only character that has a thick Japanese accent?
Well,
nobody else in the Fire Nation talked anything like him.
And not a lot of characters had the same philosophy or approach that he did. He did a lot of things with a very passive approach, and I think you can't do that in a series where you're trying to cut out so much of the filler.
Yeah.
So, they had
Iroh's
to change
wisdom
it.
is such an important piece at the heart of that show.
Yeah.
And he's teaching Zuko that there's something to learn. Because Zuko has no respect for any of the other nations except the Fire Nation. And Iroh is the one who teaches him that that's dumb. You have to look. There's wisdom to be learned from every other society on the planet. You have to take inspiration from everything around you, not just where you're from. The lightning deflection is a waterbending technique. That was so... I love that scene so much.
Yeah.
I think it's just such an important scene to show to kids. Like, don't just be so proud of who you are, and don't assume that you and your kind are the ones who know everything and have everything right, because there's something to learn from everyone. And it's such an important lesson.
And I also I like some of the nods that they've been doing where like they did the Leaf on the Wind song in the background.
Yeah.
And oh my god, that was getting me a little.
Why doesn't Azula have blue fire?
Dude, I don't know.
Again, that was one of those things. She first firebends and it's blue and everyone's like, the fuck is going on?
Yeah. They just I'm trying to like let this play out for Azula, because I like, again, there's certain things that didn't happen in this first season, like when Katara freed the ship full of earthbenders, like that was a huge growth moment for her. And then there's things like Azula just being absolutely batshit and unapologetic to everyone, including her father, versus right now where she looks insecure. She looks weak.
Yeah, she does. She looks insecure and weak. She does not have that cockiness, that just pure, unadulterated arrogance and confidence in everything she does.
Yep.
Like,
it made her.
She's so wonderful. She's such a great villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully that will also be remedied moving forward. But I think we've talked about it a lot. I think overall we all agree that like we're not gonna walk away from the show and not give it another chance. I think we all were pretty satisfied with what we got out of this first season and have high hopes for what comes next.
Silver medal try.
Yeah. I would say that's very fair. And I'm again pointing out, I know myself, I know that I'm a very harsh critic. I know I was struggling with a lot of these things. And I still think that they did the best that they could to create a good approach. So anyway, that was it. Kris, I know you got some social media shenanigans that you like to share for the peoples, the sheeples.
I mean,
you got any cabbages?
This week's episode is not filmed for a live studio audience. It is fueled by feedback from listeners like you. You can get in touch with us in a multitude of ways. We have an official Geekade Discord for the entire This Week's Episode channel dedicated to authentic TV talk, where Ferg just pointed out that Homicide is officially going to be streaming on Peacock.
Yeah.
Right, for Homicide. Anyway,
so happy for
and of course, regular Geekade social media accounts linked to in the show notes. 4 of us can be found in various ways. You can read my work at StoneAgeGamer.com and in the pages of Nintendo Force magazine. Karen, where can the Purples find you?
They can find me at STM Stitches on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Etsy.
And G, where can people find you?
Check out my Instagram. It's A for not. So first initial, last name. If you need the spelling, just check out the Geekade website.
And Evan, what about you?
Check out talesofcapefear.com.
Good call. Mm-hmm. If you need to know more about the shows we discussed tonight or what we'll watch in the future, have a look at our show notes. If you have any other questions at all, we can always be reached at mail@. Just include the words this week's episode in the subject lines. This show is available anywhere fine podcasts are sold, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Wherever you decide to listen, please like, comment, subscribe, leave reviews. Any and all feedback, welcome and appreciated. Again, as always, keep your eyes on Geekade. More fresh, original content. Back to you, Angie.
Well, thank you so much, Kris. All right, darling husband. What is your pick?
Okay. I was going to pick that Mummies Unleashed for you.
Mummies Alive.
Or Alive, whatever. But I said, no.
We are the mummies.
She got so excited when we came across the trailer for like that 1990s
Well, I made him look it up. Kris, do you remember that show?
I do. I don't know if I ever watched it, but I remember cartoon. Marshall.
All right. It just makes me feel good that someone else knows it existed.
Anywho, I came across this show that like really piqued my interest. It is called Tales of the Unexpected. We are going to watch season 1, episode 5, The Landlady.
Okay.
This is a
spooky.
It's a British anthology series. It features short stories by Roald Dahl, right?
What?
Is that how it's? That's how it's.
Yeah,
pronounced,
the
right?
guy who wrote James and Giant Peach.
Yeah, and Matilda and all that. So he does the intros for the first, or if like I think he's the introducer for the first 2 seasons because it's like 8 or 9 seasons, and like this is getting some. I mean, it's old. It's like 1979 is when this show came out.
Dang.
But I came across it and it looked so interesting and it got some really good reviews. So I want to check that out. So that's I did the Google saying, hey, what's the best episode? And there was like 6 of them and I just picked one. And I said,
Cool.
this one. This is the one we're going to watch. So that is Tales of the Unexpected, Season 1, Episode 5, Landlady. It'll be on the Black Skies. I make sure you'll have it.
You're going to love it. Anyway, moving on. Well, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much for letting us know about our homework. Thank you, listeners, for being here. Feel free to post on the Discord about any of your likes or dislikes, who you would like to have seen cast as Katara instead of the trash we got. But anyway, that's all for us. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Angie.
I'm Karen.
Evan.
Not my cabbages.
They got that guy.
Good night.
And this concludes our broadcast day.